All right, welcome back everybody. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome to Notes to Fret, where we are all about turning theory into riffs. And in this video, we are going to further discuss the Lydian mode. And so this is Supplemental Part 1. I shouldn't say further discuss, but I'm going to clarify a lot of the information that got put out in that Lydian video. I know a lot of people, there was a lot to cover in that video, and as I was looking at it, in the interest of time of the video as well as the amount of information, some of it probably got confusing, right? And I don't want this stuff to be confusing for anybody. It's really, once you grasp it, it's really straightforward. So I'm going to put out a couple of supplementals to that original Lydian video, just so we can, make certain that everything really is clear on that. So if you haven't watched that video, go take a look at it before coming into this one. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. Here we have our C Ionian, right? C major, no problem. Everybody's got this. And in order to make the Lydian scale, we just start from the fourth degree, right? And so we just start counting from F. And for the intervals, we just start counting from that whole step immediately following our fourth degree, right? And so whole step, half step, whole step, half step, right? That's Lydian. And then obviously we have our count, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth being, B in this case. But what I want to do is really talk about that fourth, because we talk so much about the raised fourth. And in order to do that, I'm just going to compare C Ionian to C Lydian, right? They're both major modes, so we can compare them directly one for one. And when we're looking at it here, we clearly see that this half step in Ionian at the top, and we have the whole step between E to F in Lydian at the bottom, right? And that's what gives us our F sharp. I think, for the most part, we're pretty clear on this, but here I want to really focus in on this fourth. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of clear everything out, and we're just going to focus in on this fourth, right? This is where everything that we're going to be talking about comes from, because it has a domino effect, right? You can't just change something in the scale and think it gets isolated, right? It's going to trickle down to everything. And so what I want to do is really look at how that interacts with the entirety of the fretboard. So here, real quick review just to make certain, right? We talk about a half step, it's 1 fret. We talk about a whole step, it's 2 frets, right? So just want to make certain we're all clear on that. Now from here, we have the Ionian at the top, we have Lydian at the bottom, and we see that the only difference is the fourth, right? We have that raised fourth. Now, what I want to do is take a look at Ionian, because Ionian has a perfect fourth. And we're not going to just take my word for it, let's prove it, right? And the way that we're going to look at that is we're going to look at the intervals in Ionian. So first, we're going to notice that we have a whole step from C to D, and that's 2 frets, right? So if we look at our fretboard, we move up 2 frets. Then from D to E, we have 2 more frets. Again, we look at our fretboard, we move up 2 frets. Therefore, from C to E is 4 frets, and therefore we know that E is a major third of C. Okay, fine, whatever. But we are interested in the fourth. And so therefore, from E to F, we have a half step, and that means from C to F, we moved up 5 frets, meaning that Ionian, though it's the scale Ionian, has a perfect fourth, okay? Now, in this video, we are not going to be talking about the tritone. Remember, we said tritone is used when there's no context. Here we have a lot of context. We are very specifically talking about the fourth degree in the major modes. So, or at least in Ionian and Lydian. So we have very specific context, right? So we will not be using tritone. Now from here, what I want to do is take a look at the intervals of Lydian. And so right off the bat, we look from C to D, and we have a whole step, right? 2 frets. So look back at our fretboard, we've moved up 2 frets. D to E, again, we've moved up 2 frets. So therefore, from C to E in Lydian, it's still a major third. Okay, they're identical there, no big deal. However, when we go from E to F sharp, because we raised that fourth, now we have 6 frets between C to F sharp, as opposed to the 5 frets from C to F that we had in Ionian. Therefore, in Lydian, because we've moved up 6 frets, we have that augmented fourth, right? We've moved up that additional 2 frets. Therefore, Lydian has a raised fourth or an augmented fourth. And this is what I was talking about when some people will call this an augmented mode. This is why, okay? So, beyond just looking at that, if we talked about moving that perfect fourth up 1 fret, we get that augmented fourth, right? And that's what we see in Lydian. So from here, you can see that I've put all the numbers now beneath the whole steps and the half steps in the modes. We're going to need that in a minute. And I'm going to remove that fourth, right? We know we're talking about the F in this case. So what I want to do is just kind of explain how I evaluated some of the points that I kept iterating in the previous video, right? I kept talking about the D from D major to D minor. I certainly talked a lot about diminished. And then, there was some minor stuff in there as well. But first, I want to just kind of explain how we look at chords. We look at chords, the very basic ones. They're called tritones. It's a first, a third, and a fifth. All your caged chords, right? Your C majors and your D minors and everything that you played in caged, or your D majors in caged, those are all they're tritones, right? They sound good. You got a first, a third, and a fifth. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So by evaluating where I wanted to focus in on the previous video, as an example, when we move from C to E, and why am I moving from C to E? Why do I focus in on that? Well, E is a third of C. In this case, it's a major third. And if I look at the Ionian mode, I also look at C to E, right? And they both have major thirds. So far, I'm not really that interested. But we talked about tritones, right? We also need to evaluate the fifth of each chord. So here, when I evaluate the fifth, well, if you look from C to G in both Ionian and Lydian, you may right off the bat be thinking, whoa, there has to be a difference there because you have an F sharp. But count the number of frets from C to G in both Ionian and Lydian, and you'll see, even though they're rearranged, it's still 7 frets. So C has a perfect fifth, right? So in both Ionian and Lydian, C has a major third, i.e. E, and a perfect fifth, G. So not very interesting. But now we move on to the next degree of the scale or the mode. And in this case, I'm looking at D. Now I have D to F sharp. That's definitely different. And you'll notice that in order to go from D to F sharp, I've moved up 4 frets, meaning that is a major third. F sharp is a major third of D. But when I look at Ionian, and when I go from D to F, that's a minor third. So Ionian has a minor third, Lydian has a major third. And that is one of the reasons I kept harping on D in the full Lydian video. But we need to be complete, so we need to evaluate the fifth as well. So when we go from D to A in both Ionian and Lydian, again, that F sharp, does it matter for the fifth? Well, no. Count the number of frets between D to A, and even though they're rearranged, from D to A is still 7 frets, so it's a perfect fifth, right? So the only thing that really became interesting about D is, well, D went from major to minor, okay? That's why I kept kind of harping on D. This is why. So then I go in, I evaluate the next degree, in this case the E, or the third degree, right? And I go from E to G. Well, does E to G change? Well, no, it gets rearranged, but the number of frets from E to G in both Ionian and Lydian is identical. So it's mildly interesting to me so far, but need to evaluate the fifth, right? We need to be complete. So from E to B in both of these scales, does the F sharp impact me? No. From E to B in both Ionian and Lydian is still a perfect fifth. So E still has a minor third and a perfect fifth in both modes. So I didn't really talk too terribly much about it because nothing really changed. Now we get to the star of the show, right? So in Ionian, when we go from F to A, that is a major third, right? We got 4 frets. But when we go from F sharp to A, that is a minor third, right? We only have 3 frets. So now I'm going, okay, this is interesting. But in the Lydian video, I didn't really talk a whole lot about F sharp minor, but I kept going on and on and on about F sharp diminished. And so what was the diminished thing? And we look at this and we go, it's a minor third. So therefore it should be F sharp minor. But we need to evaluate its completeness. So we need to look at the fifth as well. And so from F to C in Ionian, that's a perfect fifth. Like it's still 7 frets. So who cares? But in Ionian, we know we had a major third, so that made it interesting. But the fifth was kind of indifferent. The F to A being major makes that interesting because when we look at it, Lydian, the F to A is minor, so that's our first kind of peak of interest. And then when we look at F sharp to C, F sharp to A is minor. F sharp to C, if we count the number of frets between F sharp and C, it's not 7. It's now 6, right? And in Ionian, it is 7. So Ionian, we just have a major third and a perfect fifth, right? Seen that a bunch of times. But now in Lydian, we have F sharp. F sharp has a minor third and not a perfect fifth, but instead it has a diminished fifth. And so we talked about when we take that perfect fifth and we move it back 1 fret, it becomes that diminished fifth. So therefore, F sharp isn't just minor, it has a minor third, but it also has that diminished fifth. And because of that diminished fifth, that's really where we go, wow, okay, boom, that's big. Not only did we raise the fourth, but we created a diminished chord out of it as well. So that's a huge impact. By the way, for diminished chord, just FYI, somebody will call me out on it. The diminished by itself, the diminished fifth, it needs to have a minor third as well. I'm not going to talk about all that because we'll get into all of this with chords. But for the time being, just keep in your mind that because of the diminished fifth that's why we kept harping on F sharp diminished. And I feel like I'm giving a huge spoiler alert for my supplemental number 2, which we'll talk a lot more about this. But again, I wanted to get some clarity out there for everyone. So again, this is the first supplemental I'll put out there to help clarify anything that, any issues somebody may have had out there with this. But hopefully this gets you started on the, on a better track understanding Lydian. I'll get another supplemental out in the next couple days. And we will see you in the next video. Until then, leave me a comment if you have any other questions about this. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.